Hello, dear viewers, and it's another week in this episode of your program, The International Sphere, and I'm your host, Agnes Tuniga. Here on the set, today I'm joined by the Ambassador of Sweden to Tanzania, His Excellency Anders Sjöberg. My guest, please welcome here on the show. It feels good to accept us here at your residence.
Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me to your show and welcome the Swedish residents.
Just to begin our discussion, let me ask you that you've been here since 2018, and how do you like your stay in the country?
No, I think it has been a fantastic tour of duty so far, and me and my wife enjoy it tremendously, both professionally and privately. Tanzania is an amazing country, and I'm very happy and pleased to be posted here.
Oh, great. Tanzania and, of course, the Nordic countries, Sweden inclusive, do share a long-term historical ties. And with Sweden itself, what do you say that, or what can you say on what cements the bilateral ties between the two sides?
I think there are so many things that cements our ties, but what first comes to my mind is the people-to-people contacts. You know, wherever I go in this beautiful country, I meet people that have either studied in Sweden, they have worked in Sweden, they have family in Sweden, they do business with Sweden. So the people-to-people contacts, I would say, is something that brings us together. And it started already, before independence, but then it was intensified at independence when our leaders at the highest level, I think there was a meeting of minds between the leaders, and they, so we embarked on this journey together. So that's where we still find ourselves, I think.
Mr. Ambassador, in 2018, when you submitted your credence there, or your credentials to His Excellency, the President of the United Republic of Tanzania, by then, you stated, I quote here, that you're proud to represent Sweden in Tanzania for the next coming years. What has been your main mission, you being as a head of mission?
Well, I think as an ambassador, it's very important to continue a new chapter when you arrive as a new ambassador, to continue to strengthen the ties and broaden the relations as well between our two countries. So that has been my main focus, and so it's both in the sphere of politics, democracy, human rights, and also business ties. So I've been working in all these in all these different fields, and we have also been very fortunate because there has been also an exchange at the political level. We had the Nordic Africa foreign ministers meeting here in Tanzania a couple of years ago, hosted by the foreign minister of Tanzania. We have had other high-level visits here as well. So this work continues.
You have mentioned here the issue of democracy that has also been part of your main focus. You have witnessed the general elections here in Tanzania in 2020. What can you say concerning the issue of democracy and, of course, good governance?
I think democracy is a top priority for my country. Democracy, human rights, rule of law. So it's a key priority wherever we work in the world. And we see in general globally that democracy is on decline. Democracy is struggling. So as Sweden, we are not only keen to defend democracy and rule of law, but also to promote democracy and rule of law. So that has been one of my key priorities and my key mission here in Tanzania.
Okay, we are talking about Sweden, of course, Tanzania being the main partner in development, and the issue of trade and investments. What areas do you see of expansion you think maybe should be revisited?
I think there are a range of areas that we should try to expand and revisit. We have had a bit of a lull in our trade relations and in investment relations lately. For that particular reason, we conducted a study within the Nordic context. It was actually the first Nordic business climate survey that was done. And so we went out and asked the companies, the Nordic companies here, what are they, what are the challenges and also what are the opportunities. And one very welcome news was that many of these companies, they have been here for quite some time. So they are sustainable investors and they like to work and stay in Tanzania, but they also faced some hurdles related, to taxes, to work permits. And what we also picked up in other conversations is also the predictability, predictability, accountability, and transparency when you do business. So if you want to risk your money someplace, in this case Tanzania, of course you need to know is there a rule of law, is there an independent judiciary, and so forth. And that's the way to bring sustainable investors. So I think many companies are prepared to look at Tanzania, but this is something that any investor would look into before going anywhere.
Talking about investors all the way from Sweden, what mainly do they invest in? What type of businesses do they invest here in Tanzania that they feel it's of an opportunity to them?
Yeah, so we have long-term investors like Scania Bus and Trucks. I think it's a household brand here in Tanzania.
Yes.
You see investors in the telecom sector where we have big multinational companies. Millicom has been, one of the top 3 investors here in Tigo. You have Ericsson, of course, also in the telecom sector. Then we have some big companies in the mining sector, suppliers, advanced, equipment to the mining sector. At the other end of the spectrum, you would also find companies that are in manufacturing, hospitality, agro-processing. So it's a pretty broad range of companies that are present here in Tanzania.
Mr. Ambassador, poverty reduction efforts have been more effective in recent years. And do you think that has the Swedish aid contributed to poverty reduction in Tanzania, in your own perspective?
I think to a certain extent, I'm convinced that it has contributed. And I would like to phrase that in 2 different ways.
Yes.
One is that early on, I talked about meeting of minds between our leaders, but one concept that really resonated with us Swedes back in the 60s was self-reliance through education, which was one of the concepts of the great Mwalimu Nyerere. So we have invested heavily in human capital formation, in education, throughout our presence here during the past 60 years. And I think that is something that you see bearing fruit since many years, actually. And of course, that if you have people that are well educated, if they're healthy, they can make good decisions about their own lives. So it's a basic primary education is one thing, but then we have also invested heavily in research. So we have more than 200 people that have graduated their PhDs from Sweden. We have more than 700 master students in a range of different sectors. So all that, building up capacity, and that also brings institutional capacity in government, businesses, and so forth, universities, is one part of it. The second part is our, I would say, direct support to poverty alleviation. So we are working very closely with the government of Tanzania and what is called TASAF.
Yes.
The productive security safety net, which is a big social security program, which is really targeting people that are very, very vulnerable. And we are working specifically with the women of the household, and we're talking about cash transfer, small minor amount of money, but it's enough to keep the families going, to bring the kids to the health clinics, bring them to schools, perhaps feed them a meal of food, and we know that this is really working. So I think So these are some examples on how our development cooperation has supported, but equal and perhaps even more important is the many economic and political reforms that were undertaken in the 80s, 90s, and that have continued, because it's the reform policies that bring wealth and prosperity.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Ambassador, we have this new strategy for Swedish development cooperation with Tanzania for 2020 to 2024.
Yeah.
Of course, it has started being implemented since last year. And what is the significance of this strategy, and what is the new package that it has come in with that is different or unique to make sure that it helps out in development as a whole?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So our overarching goal with any development cooperation we do around the world is, to combat poverty. So that's the key overarching goal here. We will continue to invest in human capital formation, education, democracy, rule of law, gender equality. One of our top priority areas is to support women. We have feminist foreign policy, where we are looking at women's equal rights, equal resources, equal representation in the democratic assemblies, and also women as role models.
Yes.
So these are the 4 R's that are sort of guiding us in our work towards gender or a more gender equal world. A unique feature of this new program is that we are, mustering support to, combat climate change and the environment and biodiversity. And Tanzania is such a rich country when it comes to biodiversity, to different, types of nature. And I think we see again a meeting of minds, Glasgow climate summit in the coming up here in the next days will put the spotlight on the climate issues. And I think we, to work together with Tanzania on the multilateral arena is something that we are really eager to continue with.
Talking through this strategy now, looking on the issue of on the political arena, women representation here in Tanzania, through this strategy, what are the reports coming in? What are the reports saying? How is that achieved so far?
I think we see some good achievements. We see, of course, Tanzania having now the first woman president, which is it's a remarkable achievement. We also see an increase in, or more equal representation in the government.
Yes, and
parliamentarians, and we also see among judges. We are working very closely with UN Women on these issues, and we are together with them going to launch a gender bench book, which is a compilation of all the legislation that is impacting women. So I think also through the judiciary, so that women are more aware, and also men more aware about women's rights. Through these, so that we can, bring transparency into the legislative framework and see, what are the legislation and also what are the challenges, when it comes to child marriage and other things that needs to be, girls' rights to education, pregnant schoolgirls, and so forth. So bring that into the equation. So, but I'm actually rather optimistic when it comes to, we see a strong push now from the government on gender equity.
Okay,
Equality.
Great,
yeah.
Great. What is your take, Mr. Ambassador, now concerning the Sixth Faith government, which is in power right now, the current government, spearheaded by President Samia Suluhu Hassan, especially on the reformation of economy and, of course, diplomacy?
We see very important opening when it comes to dialogue. We have, we have numerous contacts with government officials, with ministers, and so forth. And I'm a strong believer as a diplomat in dialogue. We need to talk to each other and we need to understand each other. So I think that's number one. Second point, I really cherish the regional approach by Her Excellency and her team to reach out to neighboring countries, and because that's where trade and economy happens. In our case, Sweden, 70% of our trade is within the European Union. So it's, you trade locally and regionally, and you think globally. Of course, trade with more distant partners is also to have access to the European market and so forth is key for Tanzania. But again, it's to develop the regional space, and also the signing of the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement is another, I think, achievement and milestone in all this. So positive progress here in the field of economy and trade.
Yeah, I've mentioned on the reformation on economy and diplomacy, Mr. Ambassador. Do you think there's anything that is specific you need the government, the current government, to address that has been left out?
Yeah, I'm coming back a little bit to this Nordic business survey we did, and also our contacts with the chambers that are focusing, chambers of commerce that are focusing on Africa in Sweden. The message we get is about predictability, accountability, and transparency. So, and all that, it comes with the rule of law, the independent judiciary, and so forth. So, if you want to risk your money in the market, you need to be relatively secure that if things for some reason is not going that well, there is a system, there are framework and conditions in place that will help you as an investor. So I very much welcome that the blueprint now will be implemented. So I think that will hopefully take care a lot of this, some of the issues that might be there in the business climate.
Talking of COVID-19, what is your assessment with the Tanzanian government in addressing this issue of the pandemic? With regard to the experience back in your country.
We very much welcome the turnaround, the transparency, the production of data, because that's, again, it's key. You need to have data, you need to have facts, you need to know what is going on. So that is something that we very much welcome. In terms of vaccination, of course, it's Tanzania
it
has been introduced here, which is also extremely welcome, because without people being vaccinated big scale, it's going to take a very, very long time to weed out this pandemic. It might take a long time anyway, but yeah. So vaccination here is key, and we see now more batches coming in, and I think also the acceptance rates for becoming vaccinated is also increasing. That's what I pick up during my trips around the country.
Within the time that they have been, in the collaboration and partnering with Sweden, it's almost 60 years. What can be your highlights in this partnering, of course, in development, and of course the bilateral ties throughout the time up to now?
I think what really marks these 60 years of independence is the tolerance, the unity, the peacefulness, and also Tanzania being a relatively secure and safe place. So this is, I think all this is when you have safety and security, you take it for granted. But when you don't have it, it comes at a very, very high cost. So I would say the peace, stability, and security is really one of the hallmarks of Tanzania as a nation, and that's something that we really, really cherish. In terms of our collaboration, I think I've mentioned some areas. I could also bring up the energy sector, where we have been working very closely together to build infrastructure. We know that electricity brings development. We were proudly supporting the Makambako-Songea transmission line that was inaugurated a couple of years ago. That was a flagship project. We have done a lot of rural electrification, but now we want to switch more to renewables. do you make use of the renewable power? So that's the energy sector is one thing. If you go back, we also see on the democratic side, on the political side, the step in the 90s to move towards multi-party democracy, which I think was a major milestone achievement, and we saw for a number of years that this was developing and more parties coming on stream, and also a more of a pluralistic political environment. And I think that is something that we also hope will continue. I understand that the Tanzania Center for Democracy is now active again, and they are planning conferences and so forth. So I hope that this will be embraced, and that we will see more again dialogue and more voices that can be heard. So again, a lot of milestone achievements. I would also like to congratulate Tanzania on its first Nobel Prize laureate, Abdullah Razak Gurnan. I think it was a remarkable achievement, and again demonstrates the greatness of this part of the world, and to give people around the world an insight into the life here in East Africa. So hongera sana.
Asante on behalf.
Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Ambassador, we are running out of time, but very briefly concerning the health sector, especially with the maternal health.
Yes.
How has your government looked into that, especially here in Tanzania?
So we have been looking into that. I would say we have been in almost every sector that you can think of in Tanzania. So we have not specifically been supporting the health sector, but through our regional programs we have been working with sexual and reproductive health and rights. So that is something that we have been supporting. We have also been working a lot with girls' rights, children's rights, which is part of this this package. So the Femina HIP and so forth are part of our the organizations that we support. That is an area where we are quite active.
Mr. Ambassador, thank you so much for your time. We feel privileged to have you here on the set, and thank you for joining us here on the program, The International Sphere.
Thank you so much indeed. Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Asante sana. Asante.